Here's the call every delivery engineer dreads. You ship an AI model into production and it works. Everyone's happy and you move on to the next project. However, 6 months later, you get a phone call. The model starts to act strangely and your client asks one simple question. What data did the model actually train on? Unfortunately, you don't have that answer. All you have is a slack thread and a sinking feeling. That's today's episode. Welcome back. Last episode, we looked at models that shine in the demo and fail in production. Today, we're going to go one level deeper. Everyone says the problem is the training data. There's one key problem nobody seems to be addressing head on. Well, except one guy. This is Hobei. He studied at UCL, then completed his PhD in artificial intelligence at Seoul National University. He's published a staggering 329 papers and seemingly could have stayed in research for his whole life. Thankfully for us, he founded Cubic to solve the data problem holding enterprise AI back, turning complex, sensitive data into secure, AI-ready fuel for faster deployment at enterprise scale. Welcome, Hobei.
Glad to see you again. Last meeting, you haven't, from the last episode, you haven't seen the Cubic yet. yeah, but I mean, he really doesn't help me. You can see that, right? I should leave him. Anyway, okay, let's get into it.
So yeah, today's episode is for a particular person, the one who gets sent to a company to get that AI project live. But of course, you'll then have to move on to the next client. As always, I'll be asking the obvious questions and maybe even some of the questions you're a bit too polite to ask out loud. So let's start with the news. We're seeing this a lot in the news, and it's the reason we chose the topic. OpenAI has put 150 million into their new partner sales network. They want to have 300,000 certified consultants by the end of this year. They've also launched their own deployment company, and they've brought in the big consultancies, the likes of BCG and McKinsey. So OpenAI have said it plainly. The limiting factor is no longer the model. The enterprise customers need help getting from their AI production. Their enterprise customers need help getting from AI pilot to production. In fact, it's not just OpenAI. Anthropic has made the same move. Two different companies with one message. The model has stopped being the bottleneck. So Hobei, it seems that the big consultancies have a huge advantage to secure the contracts to accelerate the rollout of enterprise AI.
Yeah, obviously they do, and it's good for them. The part doesn't worry me, but everyone is missing something. The bottleneck was never a choice between the model and the data. It's whole execution. The integration, the organization, and the evidence. Now the big firms have internal accelerators for parts of this, but those are hand-maintained. They differ from firm to firm. So they enforce nothing while the AI is running. So, and they stay behind when the engagement actually ends. And there's one piece of the job that even the accelerators don't own.
Okay, go on then. What's that one thing?
Obviously, the proof that the data, your AI ran on the data, you say it ran on. And proof that you can bring the state back at any time. Now, plenty of tools set a piece of this. The data version control, the model registries, the pipeline checks. But if you look at it, well, the glue, the bind, the run, the data states, and the checks into one enforcement record gets built by hand on every job. So, and it never survives the engagements. The glue is the product. We basically call it discipline.
Release
discipline. Yeah, obviously, yes.
Very catchy. So, if we just move to our first story, it comes from someone that we'll call Theo. He's the engineer that gets flown out to get these AI projects live. And once he's completed that task, he obviously has to move on to his next client. So if you've ever shipped something that you've hoped that would work and you'd never hear about again, maybe this story's for you. He writes to say, on every engagement, I rebuild the same scaffolding by hand, the same checks, the link between the model run and the data version, the evidence pack for every client's auditors. I get it live, it works, and everyone seems happy. And then it's time to move on to the next client. The problem happens about 6 months later. He says, that first client calls the project lead. They notice that the model is behaving differently and want to know what data the model was actually run on. Unfortunately, I can't provide them with the information they need because the data state is no longer there. So I end up having to rebuild it from my best guess from memory and a handful of messages. So essentially, I have to hope for the best here. So let me ask the obvious question here first then, Hobe. Isn't this just a case of documentation? Don't you just write these things down and maybe just keep a folder with your deliverables?
Well, the Theo kept a folder. It's called, let's say, the version 3 use this. That's what we use in these days, right? And the data moves 3 times since. The documentation tells you what someone meant to do it. But it doesn't tie a running model to the state it ran on. And it can't handle the state back.
So I'd imagine some people have their own ways of solving this and may just call this some sort of discipline, process discipline. Presumably a good engineer would have version controls on the data, and then this problem wouldn't cease to exist, would it?
A good engineer would have, obviously, but we don't have many good engineers. And Theo most likely did the data code model or versions, hopefully. And what nobody owns is basically the binding. Which model run got prompted, on which data version, with which check screen, and the results. That proves it, obviously. And everyone built 3 quarters of by hand and leaves. So it's the problem. So it's not the documentation problem, it's a release problem. And it's the one part of this job you should never build by hand twice. Look at the screen, which run, or which data version, with which check screen. Everyone keeps the first 2 somewhere. And third line, the receipt that ties them together, that's what gets lost when Theo walks out of the door. Yeah. So instead of rebuilding it by hand every job, you make a thing an artifact, obviously. Then the data gets read on 6-axis, that the readiness checks. Then it's made AI ready. The metadata field, the schema lined up, the missing values, the model would choked on. So it's basically handled now. The state that passes get locked, a version, a fingerprints. And run gets bounded. So this run on this state. All of that becomes one machine readable record. So what ran, on what data, with which checks passing. So people call it the release manifest. It's not a magic button. It's simply the record that nobody kept and the data state problem we solve effortlessly. The release discipline rule is boring. I mean, obviously this the episode may be, hope not. And that's the point. No valid release manifest, no promotion to production. And to be clear, that rule lives in your promotion process. So you decide where it sits and what it blocks. So underneath, it is the undergroundness work, release state, basically. Run binding, diff reproduce. That's the entire job.
Okay. Is this not similar to a report? You've kind of described what I would think is maybe just a fancy PDF release document.
Oh, no. If it were a PDF, I would build a static consorting deliverable and you should fire me, you should say. And if I was engineer, and this has to be read by API. It sits the layer between your data and your model. A PDF is a record of the past, obviously, and this is the critical part in of AI-ready infrastructure.
Okay, cool. So why don't we just get into it then? Why don't you show me exactly what you mean?
Okay, here's the data going in, and read on 6 axes such as the usability, integrity, context, consistency, reproducibility, traceability. And here's everything that isn't AI ready yet. Then it's made AI ready, which obviously including the metadata field, schema lined up, the missing value, the model would have tripped on. So now it's handled. Recheck, obviously, and still green. The state that passed gets locked now. Obviously, we can say it's released, a version, a fingerprint. So it can't quietly drift on you now. Then I bind the model, run the exact state. So this run on this data. Now I try to push a run whose release isn't qualified yet. It doesn't go through. That's the layer doing its job. The piece that was never there between your data and your models. 6 months later, what ran on good version? Or well, even 1 month later, we don't remember everything, right? So reproduce exact state is quite difficult. Or diff, what changed? So there's Theo's answer. It is in a click. That whole bundles is the manifest. The readiness check, the fixes, the locked states, and the binding. It's a record that you didn't have to write by hand.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So essentially in 6 clicks, you can get that manifest and, unlike Theo, you don't have to rely on your memory. That leads me to think about one particular question. Typically, clients who are hiring the likes of Theo to launch those AI projects are going to be quite data security conscious. So to read the data and to make it AI ready, does it have to leave the environment?
No, not at all. It runs where the data already lives. Nothing gets pulled out. So for the clients that hire Theo, that's not a feature. It is the only version that they let in the building.
Okay, but wouldn't the AI labs have their own deployment companies to manage this? Thinking of the likes of OpenAI and Anthropic.
For their own model, maybe yes, for sure, yeah. But that is not the part I would sell to you. The part that's the metals is the boring one. You prepare the data once into a state you can reproduce it, or diff exactly what changed at any time. The model that reads, it's just a line you swap. So it works with whatever you run. Ours or yours, doesn't matter.
Excellent. So yeah, I'm sure I'm guilty of this, and just thinking back to the file conventions, the file names, yeah, I've definitely done that a few times.
Yeah, there's always version 3 or version 5 and so on. There's never version 5 that ends. It stays up to final, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, you rebuild it beautifully, then move to the next client. And the rest, it's a recipe lives with you. So every time you keep the recipe, well, you're not the one that carrying it around in your head. Getting AI to land in a business is very hard. It's a skilled work. The layer underneath, the proof that the data was right and that you can get it back in a matter of time. It's the part that we build by hand on every job. So that's the part we make reusable. They start rebuilding the same proof from the scratch.
So now for the other story that we're going to discuss, and this one's bigger, I think. It's a pattern we keep hearing in conversations with the AI labs and the platforms themselves. If you run a partner program at one of the labs with thousands of certified people putting the AI into real businesses, you've probably come across this version. It's the same model everywhere. With one partner, it's brilliant. With the next, it falls flat. And the client says our model isn't as good as the demo. The same model, the only thing that changed is whether that partner got the data ready for it. So how good their model looks turns out to have almost nothing to do with their model.
Yeah, we hear that almost every of the meetings. You ship the model, but it's effectively 1,000 because each is fed data in a completely different states. The model didn't get worse at the second clients. It made the data nobody made ready. And it keeps happening because there's nothing between the data and the model. The layer that gets between the data ready and same way. So whoever hands in it matters.
So, okay, why don't you show me then? So the same model, but 2 different outcomes.
Yeah, it's the same model. I fed one partner's data exactly as it arrived. Look, outputs, you can see it's all over the place. Now, I run the data through the missing layer, such as which includes the metadata, the schema line the field, and filling the missing values. Now it's handled. We can say it's AI ready. So you can understand it's basically the same model, or same prompts, and also same prompts, and the data is simply AI ready states. So there is it. I never touched the model. I added the layer that wasn't there before.
See, so the model was fine this whole time, and to think it's the model is a little bit insulting, but that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's starting say it's data in these days. The fine, they're right, and they stop there at clean it, just clean it. I mean, it's different from converting into AI ready states or build a data foundation. But data foundation isn't the same as the qualified release. What actually missing is a verifiable release state, and everyone bound to it. Not the data's nice. Here's exactly what ran, and here's the recipe. Not recipe, reset.
So the headline's kind of clear. It's saying that, the data is the problem, but if we look a little bit more into the small print, it's really about, can you prove the history and the data state?
Yeah, that small print is the product. You may think it's small, but it's something that we should do it.
Okay, so now then, I've got 3 questions here, and they're ones that we get in nearly every meeting. So I thought maybe you can just respond to each one of these, Hobe. The first one, typically, our clients are saying that we already have a data problem and we have our own accelerator team. So where does Cubic even fit in?
Sure. I mean, let them keep their platform. We don't replace the catalog or the pipeline. We pin one thing they didn't do before. So which is exactly the release fit for their exact run. And here's the proof. The storing the data isn't certifying the release. Most vendors add another dashboard in their platform or just providing APIs. What we do is we simply add layer into their AI states where AI actually run through the one that was never there.
So the second one, and I think it's fair, who really wants to add another vendor into their AI stack? Because doesn't that just add additional complexity?
Fair, you may think it's complexity, but we don't ask you to run you to trust a demo, obviously, or connectors or an API to fix a scope of pilots. The integration costs on the table first. If it doesn't cut the bill, rebuild you to every single project, then don't keep us. Obviously, just try with our products. It's very simple and not costly.
And then probably the big one, which is, isn't this something that can be built by the client themselves? Why would we just choose Cubic?
Yeah, obviously you could. You'd have to working from Monday to the Sunday, even Sunday, right? From designing architecture to rebuild and so on. Then you maintain it across every client. They may have a lot of clients, and they need to test out each of clients and update it every time a policy changes. This is quite important. The policy changes every year since it is not fixed yet. And keep the audit evidence in one standard. And make it work with the models and platforms you don't control. So that's not a weekend. So that's a product. So, just build a demo. Buy the discipline. It would be a much simpler way.
I like that. So yeah, get on, build the demo, and buy the discipline. You could probably put that on a mug. Okay, so why don't we wrap up here, though? And maybe we can just summarize what we covered across this episode.
Yeah, we hear it across the table over and over. The engineer who did everything right and still cannot prove what shipped. So if you ask someone who built an AI model, if you ask, well, obviously there's no proof or anyway of the release date and so on. So the lab whose model looked worse than it is because nobody made the data ready. We read it enough times and they have built a layer. So if data state are running your AI projects, take a sample and data and run it through the SynTitan trial. It's very simple, just to upload your sample data and see what it goes. I mean, see yourself. Obviously, that's something that you can easily test out from our SynTitan trial.
Excellent. So as normal, we'll put a link in the first comment. So check that out or don't. But I guess the question is it something that you can reproduce next year? Will you have the history of what actually ran in your AI project? And if you don't, then you probably need a solution to take care of that. So as this show is based on the typical data challenges and disasters, we continue to enjoy some of the stories and comments that you provide us. So, if you've got your shipped it and couldn't prove it story, send us the comments. And as always, the best ones will get read out. And I'm sure we will even send out a coffee for you.
Yeah, obviously. And finally, you can see here, Cubic, if you have a chance to have a coffee with us, then you can meet a Cubic here. Look at here. Well, he's here. He's quite nervous.
Yeah, next time, we're going to hand over the whole of this webinar to a particular red team to understand whether we can break the model. We want to see if we'll get a confident and completely wrong answer. Proper red team special. So if you've ever watched something sound dead sure of itself while being completely wrong, that one's for you. And we'll bring that to you in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, bring your stories. I'll bring my stories next episode. Hopefully with a Cubic too.
Yep, continue to bring your stories. And we'll speak to you soon.